Assalamu alaikum and peace be with you. You're watching Muslim Network TV, and we're there always on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, as well as all the social media. Pretty soon we'll be on Apple TV as well. As the world is changing, it seems to stay the same. I'm so afraid that with all the marches and everything, and I have done that. I remember when in Chicago were marching for Black Lives Matter, well, full of passion, shouting slogan for Laquan McDonald, 1 shot, 2 shot, and we'll count until the 16 shot, and we'll restart again. And we did that for weeks. I'm afraid we'll go home and politicians will take us for a ride. It was 10 days ago when I participated in a NAACP meeting. And it's a major organization for African Americans. And in the whole meeting, before the meeting, they ask if you have any questions or any suggestion, please send it out. I sent them beforehand. There were more than 100 people in that meeting. And during the meeting, they discussed everything, this law and that city thing and this and that. But one thing which was not discussed, that was within 5-6 days of George Floyd's murder, was his murder was not discussed. How we keep the movement up was not discussed. What can we do next? What is the plan? And I was just wondering what's happening. This is the major organization, historic organization. So after the meeting, I received 2 days after the meeting, I received, oh, we forwarded your question to somebody. And I'm still waiting to hear from them. When there is a movement going on, you need to build on it. I remember when Muslim ban happened, within 24 hours, ACLU, without a campaign, online receives $24 million, probably 1 million per minute, because people throughout the America understood the message. They wanted to do something about it. And they thought ACLU will fight for them. So we will talk today about Black lives and Black leadership with a person who I have marched in Chicago, and a person who is, I can consider my friend. And he's Reverend Gregory Livingston. Welcome, brother. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum, my brother. Always a pleasure to be with you, to see you, Imam. Always.
Reverend Gregory Livingston is a pastor, preacher, and civil rights leader. I remember marching with him and shouting, he is taller than me and louder than me. Purge, purge. You remember that? Purge, 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 purge.
In front of City Hall, mind you.
In front of City Hall and inside City Hall.
Yes.
And the Burge was a police officer in Chicago who used to torture blacks, forcing them to false admissions, and people will be punished. So he was arrested, he was punished, and many of those people, and I'm thankful to Gregory Livingston for being part of a leader of that movement. He lives in New York City. I don't know why in the world, because I wanted him to be the mayor of city of Chicago. Look at the mayor of the city of Chicago. She has increased police budget by $6 million, making it more than 50% of all our money is going for police.
Prosecutor.
As a public minister, Reverend Livingston has energized and engaged, well, I don't know if he can energize media, but he has engaged media, local and national, BBC, Al Jazeera, Russian television, America, China, TV, etc., on issues that affects his congregation, community, and beyond. He is known as an electrifying speaker and visionary leader. Electrifying speaker, I can relate to that. Ooh. He was talking about dirt.
Yeah.
Bad luck for him. My turn came after him. I say, oh, my dear dirty brother.
That's right. You started that. That's right. That's right.
Thank you so
That's
much,
right.
Reverend, for being with us in New York. How are you feeling today?
Imam, I am great. It's a beautiful day. Of course, New York is going through its own changes from being the national epicenter of the pandemic to this whole situation in terms of the racial unrest, which is almost like a natural state for America. But I'm glad to be here, and it's always good to be with you. I remember back, I think it was in 2005, there was a big racial profiling issue with a lot of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we worked together. I mean, we've had some great fights. I think you were chairman of the council back then, and
Right.
that's how we first met. You were the
Yes.
chairman of the council, and you were meeting with one of the religious groups, the United Methodists, I believe.
Mhm.
And one thing I do like about you is that we need to talk, but we need to walk too, and you can do both very well. So uh, I understand exactly what you were saying when you were submitting things to the NAACP, because sometimes you're a man of vision and a man who gets things done, and you're a scholar too, but you know that it takes we got to put flesh on those bones.
All right,
And excuse
brother.
excuse my look. This is my pandemic grunginess look. So I can't get a haircut, and so this is me for a moment. So yes,
Yeah.
sir.
But I see the younger people, the way they are organizing and mobilize, it seems effectively they have replaced the older leadership, which is nowhere in the leadership right now. What do you think about that?
Well, for one thing, they they won't allow the older leadership to be in that place because how can I say this? There's a credibility issue. You said it earlier, and the New York Times article that you pointed out to me on yesterday, I thought she spoke, Professor Taylor spoke quite appropriately to that whole issue. Is that you know, it's kind of like the slaves were freed, and then there was the whole idea of the Reconstruction period and members of Congress and all that. But then what we didn't understand is that we're in a war in terms of power, and power will always protect itself. Don't relax. Don't think that. Don't be lulled into some kind of lazy, just thinking that everything's okay. It is a constant day-to-day battle, and the young people. One of the advantages they do have in so many ways is their emotional inexperience, not intellectual lack or anything of that nature, but emotional inexperience, because some of those of us that have been involved have become jaded or tired or callous, to the struggle, the fight that's involved. And some of us, like you and I, the fire never stops burning. And it is so when they jump out here and see something as grotesque as the Floyd murder, well, it was the perfect convergence, if you will. We were like what I like to call a pandemic volcano, and then this
Mm.
pandemic volcano erupted when the Floyd situation was shown across the
Because there is
world.
a connection, having more blacks and more poor people dying in the pandemic, and we knew about that, and it is happening left
Yes.
and right. And the people, essential services, are essentially poorest of the poor and have no protective equipment. While that was happening, now this guy sits on my neck for 9 minutes.
For 9 minutes, Imam. 9 minutes. I mean, how cruel. I mean, and the thing about it for me is that I was talking to a journalist a couple of weeks ago about it, and I had a surreal experience when I was talking to the journalist. It's like my mind went back to antebellum plantation, a pre-Civil War
Oh,
plantation, and this guy Chauvin was like a plantation foreman with his knee on the neck of a buck Negro,
mm,
while the owners were sitting on their grand wraparound porch, sipping mint juleps, laughing raucously at the entertainment until the kill order was given. Because the calmness that Mr. Chauvin had, the at easeness that he had with just being on another man's neck. And people say to me, well, they had some kind of relationship in the past. You need to understand something. No relationship they had created the man that was able to lean in on his neck like that. That man, and for one thing, that wasn't the first time he had done it either. that was the first time he was filmed, and so uh, this convergence of events just came and exploded, and so we see our young black people, young brown people, young white people, all, and it was interesting in terms of this that we use oftentimes these racial constructs to describe the people in the protests, when in some ways the racial constructs are the problem.
Mm. Well, when I was, heard, I mean, you're in a park, and as soon as I saw park, I thought, oh, is it there bird watching? And the bird watching while being black. So, so,
Christian Cooper.
so that Mr. Cooper, graduate of Harvard, and Miss
Yes.
Cooper, no relation, of course, graduate of the University of Chicago. I remember University of Chicago. Among the earliest memory of marching for justice in Chicago is my friend Peter being arrested from the library because a white girl pointed out he stole my TV. That's all.
Mm.
And as soon as I saw this lady says, I'm going to call that you're threatening to kill me or something like that, I thought, she is the graduate of the University of Chicago, the same person which we were marching against. So when I told you this, you have your memories of how you were treated for stealing your own car. Why were you stealing your own car, brother?
I'm born and raised in Chicago, South Sider. And I was one of those, let me use the term, black guys who had checked off all the boxes, went to school, all that kind of stuff. No trouble, in that sense. So anyway, I was going to the grocery store to get my dogs some food about 7 or 8 o'clock that evening, and these cops pulled me over, two white cops, and they pulled me over, and they then have me get out of my car, and then they make me, they take unbuckle my pants and pull down my pants and my underwear, right, all the way down to the ground, and I'm buck naked from the waist down, and so I'm there, and they didn't do like a situation we had a few years ago, Imam, where they would take a screwdriver and search my uh, I guess anus for drugs or something like that. But then they made me get on the ground again, buck naked. I got on the ground, buck naked. I'm lying there, my privates on the street and all that kind of stuff. And then they throw me in the back of the squad car. The other police officer drives my car to the station. So I get to the station, then they lock me up. They lock me up. I'm handcuffed, inside the lockup, and all of a sudden, this guy walks by, and his name was Sergeant Nathan Silas. But we grew up next door to each other. His family was a police family, Chicago police family. He says, "Liv, what are you doing here?" I said, "Man, they said I stole my car." So then he says, he uncuffs me. Says, "I'll be right back." So then the two white cops come running back, because it also, as I believe, Nathan's father was the commander of that station, right?
Wow.
And they said to me, they said, "Why didn't you tell us you knew the commander? Why didn't you tell us you knew Sarge?" And because of how I've been raised, because I can tell you a story that connects that for me, if you will, is I said I was thinking about all the black young men that you would run into after me, that you may not know that they grew up next to some police officers themselves. Can I connect it real quick with this story,
Yes, please.
Imam? I've been doing some work and things. So I, my family's from Arkansas. My grandfather was born in 1883, older family. So I'm two persons removed from slavery. And so anyway, in 1919, one of my uncles, Frank Livingston, was coming back. He had come back from World War One. And so there was a white woman there in Arkansas that liked him or something like that. And she was married, but still, but her husband was a member of the Klan and all that. So they got my uncle, they chained him to a tree, and they burned him alive. And
Oh,
they also, and that's documented. He's actually memorialized in the Lynching Museum in Montgomery. They also
in
burned alive his
Montgomery,
brother.
I visited that museum, brother. We'll talk
Yes,
about it, but tell me, so that's your real grandpapa,
my great uncle, my great uncle,
your great
right?
uncle?
And his brother Teddy, my other great uncle, they also burned him alive, but that's undocumented. But it's part of the family history piece. If I could just run this up for you real quick. And so, my dad in 1945 gets in a fight with a white guy because where they worked at, the white people were washing their hands and the black people was drinking water. So my father, told them they couldn't do that. He went and bought them a thing so they could do their own. The white guy got mad at him, took a swing at my dad, right? My dad hit him with an uppercut, My dad, rest his soul. You met him at my mom's funeral.
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
guy, 6'6", 300
Uh-huh.
pounds, and he knocked the guy out. Well, that night, my uncles had to sneak my father out of the state, and he wasn't able to come back for a whole year. Okay, and so then fast forwarding to me, born in the city and all this, I was 25 years old, Imam, before I would stick my hands in my pocket in a store because I had my father's survival and coping mechanisms in society as a black man, because he always taught me if you have your hands in your pocket, they'll think you're stealing. And it was until I was 25 I said, wait a minute, you know, exposure and enlightenment. But then after that, I had that enlightenment. Then I had the situation with the police. So it's taught me a lot in terms of people's realities.
You're
Because I think
you're
about,
doing everything by the survival book which family gathered in the family, that how as
yes,
a black man you're supposed to be out, what you're doing, you've done that, gone there, and everything. Still here you are outside your car, stripped and taken to the police station. And
humiliated.
so did you sue them after you got released?
You know what? To be very honest with you, I didn't even tell my wife what had happened
Oh my
because I was so humiliated. I couldn't even. She figured that I had probably went over to, uh, uh, maybe with my brother-in-law, or something like that, right? What took, because back then we used to play the Nintendo game, right? All that kind of stuff. But I couldn't even speak it to her, but I began to understand. I did a piece with Studs Terkles years ago, right? Stud Terkle
Mhm,
rather,
mhm.
and he said, you know what? He says I didn't understand. He was interviewing this legendary black Chicago radio host named Daddy O'Daly, and Studs said to me, he says I didn't understand why black men would laugh so much until Daddy O'Daly said because it's too painful to cry.
Oh.
And I remember, just like guys coming back from war, the real warriors, they don't really talk about what happened. I mean, look, I know some of the things that you're involved in, some of the things that you're doing. I was at the UN where one of your allies was this past December with the World Genocide and Prevention Day. And so you're seeing this stuff. This is part of your own calling and mission in life. And for people that have not been around, can I add this other part for you too, just to give some context? I spoke to the Jewish community a couple of Sundays ago about this whole Floyd situation and racism and the like, and to give language and process, not to educate and inform. And we talked about what's the difference. We talked about transatlantic slave trade, Holocaust, anti-Semitism, racism. And one of the things I said to them, I said, look, we're not going to create a victim hierarchy here, and we're not going to participate in the victimology. But let's look at it scientifically. I said, the Holocaust was about annihilating the Jewish people. So the annihilation means you need to have some kind of seed or remnant, if you will, to restart that people. I said American chattel slavery is about the dehumanization of a people. You're not going to destroy your property. You're going to dehumanize them so you can use them for the free labor that they will provide. I said the question then becomes, how long does it take to rehumanize a dehumanized people? And I
Mm.
said, and for me, when you all talk about the Torah, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Bible, I said, for me, I see a liberation document. I
Mm.
said, here are these people coming out of slavery, and he says, you need to eat this way, you need to treat each other this way, you need to dress this way, because they've been beasts for
Mm.
so long. You see, and so you have to teach them how to live together. The Ten Commandments is pretty easy. Don't steal from each other because that's going to make things make it hard. Don't covet your neighbor's wife because he might kill you.
Mm.
Don't do it. It's pretty simple at
Mm.
one level, Imam. So I said because I said with this, I said so now what you're looking at when you talk about our peoples, as it were, I said you have to say if the children of Israel, the Hebrew children, most of them couldn't make it in the promised land, because Moses said, y'all just stay, it's too rough. I said, when you look at black people in America, you have to say to yourself, how long does it take to rehumanize a people? And that's a dangerous term. But
Yeah.
right now, in this era of this moment of authenticity, I think it's a proper term.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Livingston. We'll continue our conversation. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV at Galaxy 19 Satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and all over other digital places. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with my friend Reverend Gregory Livingston about Black lives and Black leadership. But in the meantime, we were discussing, I mean, you told me about that, incident, very humiliating incident when you were accused of stealing your own car. And
Yes.
before you could explain and show anything, they volunteered to take your pant and underwear down. I mean,
Yes.
this goes on, brother, in your city. I mean,
Yes.
there are tens and thousands of kids, blacks, Latinos, even Muslim kids have told me they will just stop them on the street and order them to drop their pants.
Yes.
I hope it has improved, but isn't this all of these things? What happened to you continue to happen now? What happened to people? Lynching in a different format happened to your grandpa,
Yes.
grand uncle. The same thing happened to George Floyd. I mean, the method of killing could be different, but inhumanity continues, and that's where your question: how long it takes to rehumanize people? That question, I mean, that question is like a dagger in my heart, brother. How,
Mm.
what level? I think collectively and individually. I think individually, just think of that Harvard educated bird watcher in Central Park, and that University of Chicago graduate with dog in the Central Park. I mean, look what she said. She dig into her white privilege and very clearly told him what she gonna fake. She gonna fake that you're threatening her and her dog. And this person, I don't know what went in his dog, but he said something in later on interviews that she went deep into that racist thing to draw some strength. But whatever happened to her maybe should not have happened. Something like that, he said. I mean, I see an effort to humanize the person who were dehumanizing him like anything. So maybe all of us need to grow up to become better human beings wherever we are. What do you think, Reverend?
Two things. One is, just like we talked about, American chattel slavery was about creating beast burdens, because these were not African slaves. These Africans were kidnapped and beaten into slavery. But one of the key things here is that in order to create a beast, you have to be a beast as well. Dr. King said we got to not only free the oppressed, but also the oppressor. And so what you have here is that you also have to have the rehumanization of the oppressor. And the difference being like this, there's a guy I like to follow. He has this huge lion, big cat sanctuary. And so one day he had a lady who didn't understand really what big cats were all about. And she had like 3 or 4 little dogs with her. And so they go in the back, he shows them, but they're not around the cats. And so then the dogs are like crying and going. And she's like, "What are you doing to my dogs?" He says, "Madam, I'm not doing anything to your dogs." He said, "There's the 800-pound tiger on the other side of that wall." And they realize there's an apex predator over there. They're responding like they're supposed to, right? And so so what I'm saying is that's a domesticated cat in a lion sanctuary, and the wild is another kind of cat altogether. So you can have the sophisticated beast and the unsophisticated beast, but when you get down to it, they're both still beasts. When we talk about crime and we talk about wealth and all these things and everything. But these two are inextricably connected. There is a dynamic societal tension that links them both. You can't be where you are unless you keep these where they are. You can't be high without the low. And so we're trying to bring about a level of egalitarianism or equality. But let me say this, Imam. You know, mm, I got to go into my hood for a minute. You know, the Emancipation
Hey, come back
Proclamation.
to Chicago, brother. Come
That's
back
right.
to
That's right.
Chicago.
South Side, Inglewood. But you know, the Emancipation Proclamation is set black folk free, but it didn't make us free. And so Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And there's an
Truth shall make you free.
ontological difference. Yes, there's an ontological difference between being set free and being made free. And in my hood vernacular, it's like this: it's like a crazy woman in love with a no good man. The more he beats her, the more she loves him. The more he beats her, the more she loves him. And the only way she is set free from that abuse is when the neighbors get tired of all the ruckus and they call the police and they take the man in. Well, then she will go and get her money and bail him back out, and it will begin again because she's only been set free. But when she's been made free and realizes that God ain't never made junk and he ain't never made her to be beat on, then all of a sudden, the next time he raises his hand to her, something on the inside of her has been transformed and changed, a new mind, even as it were, and that it's a different beast you're dealing with all to hear me, I said beast person you're dealing with all together. And it is about, as you just said, going getting our full humanity. Because Oxford Languages, and I love that it's Oxford, Imam, says that white supremacy is the belief or the doctrine that the white race is superior to other races. And in Oxford Languages, it says this, especially the black race. I'm glad it says that, because if I were to convert white supremacy, that definition, into a 21st century meme, it would be white lives matter more. And so the reason you have Black Lives Matter, because white supremacy, from this, in many ways, from this modern, quasi-modern European hegemonic, place that we're in, it was about the subjugation of the peoples of Africa.
So,
And so,
let's
well,
leave
please.
Oxford for a minute. Come back to hoods. Uh,
Yes, sir.
come back to hoods there. I mean, why? What do we do with the black woman who is the mayor of Chicago, and everybody supported her, and then she goes around, raises $6 million, 6% more budget, at 6% more budget to police. 50% of our budget now goes to policing, and it's a democratic city. You can't blame Republicans there, and she is black. You can't blame white. How do we handle with this phenomena with good people like you, who I want you to be mayor in the city, run away to New York?
You know what? Now, I take partial responsibility because, as you know, I was one of the folk who helped clear the way for her by running Rahm Emanuel out of town. Got arrested
I mean,
trying to shut down.
that was a good thing to do, but
Oh yeah, got arrested shutting down O'Hare Field on Labor Day 2018. The next day he says he's not going to run for a third term because we hit him in the pocket with commerce. Now she's coming to a situation where she was not a a dues paying member of the Democratic Chicago Democratic machine. She's also coming from a North Side perspective, right? And it's almost like well, she didn't really understand, in my opinion, that it was going to be this hard. And that's without the pandemic, and that is without the rioting.
hmm.
This is the, you know, you cannot serve the people and be the developer's mayor at the same time. It's impossible, and it is something that she was a choice so strongly over Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle. People did not want to see the machine placed with the machine, as it were.
Hmm.
So we were hoping she would be different. But, you really, you can't do it by yourself. You have to have the right advisors around you in a situation here, like in Chicago.
So do you
Yeah,
think she is redeemable? She could do something different. Could she be the different type of a leader?
well, I think we're all redeemable, but I think she's a one-term mayor. But if she was going to be more than a one-term mayor, she would really have to get among the people and have a real conversation with the people, not just the old school elected officials, black, white, brown, whatever they might be, because she is witnessing now these young people who don't care what they consider these co-opted elected leaders think. Because I one of the things that I'm a big advocate of, Imam, is I always tell people, how did we get the right to vote before we had the right to vote? How did we get the right to vote before we could even vote? And in the spirit of the American Revolution, we did it with our bodies and with our feet. We just kept coming. We would not accept less. And we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, tricked, and run amok and thinking that the system, which I respect, which I understand, but it is not the only way to affect right change in a society. And so she's lost, if you ask me, Imam. She's floundering, and her new police chief, poor guy. I mean, he hasn't even been to the academy yet, so he can wear a uniform. And he comes from a hotbed when he was in Dallas, and now he comes here, and now she's in a fight with the FOP and everybody else. I got to be honest with you, and I'm a hometown boy. People are asking me stuff like, "What's the deal with the 13 cops in the congressman's office eating popcorn, chilling out, while outside the office people
Could you believe
are
that?
setting stuff on fire, looting, smashing, you know, and that.
And that is the office of the former founder of Black Panthers.
Yeah, man, come on, and typically, this. I mean, you're a businessman also. That employees will typically only do what they know their managers will allow. And so these cops knew that the superintendent, David Brown, he's not their leader. The mayor, she's not their leader. FOP is their leader. That's what they respect. And FOPs around the country were even set up to be, for racism. That's part of their origin.
Yeah, that New York police chief, you heard his speech, right? Give me some respect.
Yeah. RESPECT. Yeah, man. You
Yeah.
know, and so it is.
So
She's
do you see New York somehow changing? I mean, New York, epicenter of pandemic, poor people dying there, and police doing the same job which they did before. And so, do you see? Uh, I mean, what is it? Let's talk about the role of minorities in the police. I mean, they're part of the police, they're part of the union and the fraternity, but at the same time, they have personal experiences of racism themselves. How they could learn to be a different type of a cop.
it's interesting. Let's use Chicago, for instance, uh, the black police officer. And so I think it was in the 70s that Renault Robinson formed the Afro American Police League and or Patrolmen's League. And this was because the black cops were not being represented, in terms of who they were by their superiors and by the Fraternal Order of Police. So they had to form their own group. And this is what I'm a firm believer in. You know, I'm not waiting for white folk to free us. That's the first emancipation. The second emancipation has to be of the mind and the spirit. And uh, for the black police officer, if he can find, or he or she can find allies who want to do the job as it's supposed to be done, because I am pro police, because you and I are clergy. I'm a student of human nature. I know if you took all the police out of New York right now, that some people wouldn't act right. I can just about guarantee you that, right? But it is this whole, Imam, this whole idea of what it means to be black in America and what it means to be white in America. Is there an advantage? Is there a disadvantage? Or to give you this one, I saw Merriam-Webster put out a new definition of racism today. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, Yeah, like gee whiz, golly gee willikers. I was doing a press conference about police brutality and the consent decree in front of the mayor's office there in Chicago on the fifth floor. And there was a off-duty white cop during the press conference that called me a racist. You're a racist. I said, I'm a racist. He said, yeah, you're a racist. I said, well, why are you calling me a racist? You know, he says because you're not talking about black on black crime and this, that, and the other and stuff. I said, oh, that's what racism means to you? I said, can I ask you a question, sir? And the press was there. He said, yeah. I said, can you tell me of any legislation or laws that black Americans have ever drafted to restrict the citizenship of white Americans? He said, what? I said, can you tell me of any laws that black Americans have drafted to restrict the citizenship of white Americans? He just said that. I said, well, let's flip it. Do we know of any laws that white Americans have drafted in order to restrict the citizenship of black Americans, right? Because I appreciate something you said about the civil rights movement being the vanguard of freedom, opening things up, not just for black people, but for all. And one of the things I'll say, if you take my stream of consciousness here, Imam, is that the reason I mentioned that Oxford language piece about especially black people is that when the freer black people become, the freer everybody becomes.
Mhm.
Because the system was designed specifically because in 1619, the Africans come here. You know, African American and white American are not equivalent terms. That's a continental adjective versus a racial adjective. But it's this simple. You know, is that you can be white and say you're black. NAACP lady, you know, Brother Sean King, they're both white, right? But you can't be black and say you're white. Why not? Why can I say it? Because those who created the constructions, they built it to be that way. And it is until we dismantle that. And one of the ways of dismantling that is by dismantling white privilege. But we ain't going to dismantle white privilege. What has to happen here is white America must choose repentance over guilt.
Mm.
Black forgiveness cannot exempt white repentance. So don't all that talk is good, but it's like this. I tell the Black Lives Matter kids, I call them kids, right? That you know, you with us? Okay. So when we go to jail together, we need to leave together too. No get out of jail free white privilege card. You know, you gotta stick the whole thing out. You know,
Mm.
you can't get pregnant, you know, and you know, and just have a baby with no pain. There's no such thing as an unbloody birth. Forgive my rambling, sir.
Wow. You're watching Imam. Uh, I'm about to say Imam Gregory Livingston.
We're brothers.
With Malik Mujahid. We are on Muslim Network TV at Galaxy 19 Satellite, Amazon Fire TV, and Raku, as well as Muslim Network.tv. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV, and you're watching Galaxy 19 Satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Raku, and we are always on Muslim Network.tv. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with my friend Reverend Gregory Livingston, who was needed in Chicago but went to New York. I don't like people who run away from the struggle, brother.
Oh my! You know, I'm still there. I'm still fielding calls every day, Imam, about what's popping in Chicago because Chicago, as you know, is unique. You know, New York is huge. You know, it's huge. And but one of the things about Chicago, as you know, is that you know it is a very segregated city. You
Oh, it
know, New
is.
York is yes, New York is much more cosmopolitan, and there's racism here, but it's not segregated like Chicago is. And
Mm.
that segregation, of course, is intentional. When Richard J. Daley built the Dan Ryan Expressway. That was to separate the blacks from the Irish, you know.
Mm,
And so all of these things are part of the history of Chicago. And then there's also even the in New York is cosmopolitan, but there was a different black that came through Ellis Island as opposed to the blacks that came through Jamestown and Sullivan's Port
mm,
or in the migration. Many of the blacks that came through Ellis Island had already won their freedom, you know, in various ways,
mm,
and where they were. So it's a different piece in terms of even the Americanization of a
mm,
minority and the
mm,
like. And
mm,
so
mhm.
but no, man, look, I got in trouble telling people that the pizza in Chicago was better, and oh yeah, I got
New
in trouble.
Yorkers are very nationalist, brother. These people are very proud of New York.
Very proud. And then I got in. It was in the same meeting. I was at a activist meeting, right? Then I got in trouble by mentioning that the New York Knicks had 2 years to win the championship while Michael Jordan was playing baseball, and they still couldn't do it. So, but after that, they all stood up, you know, and I sat down, you know. So, but yeah, yeah.
So you are keeping the flag high.
Oh, got to.
So do you think, I mean, this mega organization like I mean, NAACP and all that, and the new leadership coming up, do you see a new leadership uh, uh, watching out that all the protest and all the energy and all the anger translate into positive energy? So we have really good change in public policy because democratic traditional leadership and blacks who work with that leadership pretty closely, they may make the compromises which will fail the movement, which is some people are comparing to the 60s.
You know what? You said something so powerful at the beginning of the broadcast that we if we're at least casual students of history, we've seen uprisings, insurgencies, whatever you want to call it. But there's a science to uh, taming people, as it were. And if you don't use the fuel of emotion to create infrastructure and systems, well, then things are just going to revert. You know, in other words, you have to work on your garden because weeds don't need help. And so it is prehistoric, um, prehistoric prehistoric machinations and organizations that don't move at the speed of the 21st century, that still that refuse to change, refuse to understand that while you're still sitting there thinking about it, someone is out there making a change. I mean, Elon Musk has his own NASA now, you know, SpaceX, you know, uh, uh, and
The
so
guy is up there, brother. He seems to be out of this space also.
yeah, without a doubt. And it is when bureaucracy becomes the end instead of some kind of means to getting to an end, when there is no outcome that is given. Eric Hoffer, in his book on movements, he says, look, he says, Jesus had heaven, Moses had the promised land, the Prophet Muhammad paradise, if you will, Buddha nirvana, king, the beloved community. You know, bureaucrats don't have outcomes. It's just pure process. And so we have individuals that are being educated to be bureaucrats. And but the reality that I found is that, when I was pastoring on the west side of Chicago, in all honesty, some of my best members, Imam, were ex-gang members
Hmm,
because they knew what it meant to be committed to something. And when
hmm.
they said, Pastor, I'll get it done, sometimes I had to say, oh, wait. Tell me how you're going to get it done, right? You know what I mean? Seriously, right? Because there, but there is that again, man. You really hit on it earlier about we need to become more human. A lot of people are trying to become divine, and they still haven't passed human yet, right? It's like, come on, that's on both sides, because the individuals that are in power, if you will,
Hmm.
and these are individuals of a certain mindset, of a particular consciousness, but it's nothing new. There's an addiction that comes to being in power. Nothing new about that. And in Chicago, they're making sure that Lori Lightfoot doesn't get addicted to power by taking it from her. Case in point, Harold Washington, in his first term, had to fight Verdoliak and Burke, right? The
Mhm.
Verdoliak 29 for 4 years. But Harold was wise enough, he had been in the game long enough he started building his own, if you will, coalition so that he could overtake them. I mean, come on, they run a Republican, Bernie Epton, and nobody has ever seen Bernie again against Harold in the election. He almost wins, right? I mean, come on, in Chicago. And so, but it's the same. But Harold understood the nature of power. You know, I mean, he was a student. He was a mentor by Ralph Metcalf and other persons. Mike Royko wrote Pharaoh, American Pharaoh, about Richard J. Daley. Richard J. Daley is an Irish guy from Bridgeport, Canaryville, back of the yards, who understood the nature of power. You
Mhm.
know, and so and that's what he did. He built the power. If you wanted to become president, you had to come through Chicago, right? And
Mhm.
so uh, this whole thing is nothing new outside of the protests. But I can remember being in college back then, when Harold was running for office, and we go up to Loyola and stuff, and the white people had sticks and everything, clubs, about this whole Harold thing. And so it is when the slave stops thinking like a slave that the owner begins to say, I must do something now. And one
Mhm.
thing I tell these young folks is this: I say, look, don't think because you've had a couple of victories, you know, that this is one. I said they were stunned because the whole George Floyd piece was stunning. But there is a regrouping going on, re-strategizing. There are people being bought off and everything else. Why? Because that's how the world works. And so, I'm not going to blame you if you beat me in a ball game. I want to go and get better. And if I know that you cheat, well, I'm going to try to be aware that you cheat. And that's part of maturing, right, Imam? Is that you learn that life can be messy. It doesn't always color inside the lines, and I don't need to waste emotion, you know, doing that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, life could be messy. Life is always messy. Moving,
Always.
keep your goals clear and moving forward. So if you are the commander in chief of the protest today, what would you like to see happening?
I would like to see this. I would like to see in the major urban centers around the world that we have what do you call it when everybody a synchronized march into the stock exchanges, into the financial centers, disrupt those places, just have so many people there that they have to shut it down in order to, they don't have to loot, they don't have to do anything. It's like the whole Gandhi and King piece. Let's fill the jails up. Now that the jails are filled, where are you going to put the rest of us? You know what I mean? And so, but it is only, I like when the Apostle Paul quotes the poet. He says, "The love of money is the root of all evil." Never said money. You need money. Money is what we do to transact, but it's the love of it. Hit them in where they love the most. Hit them in. I like to see them go into this Paris Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, Tokyo. Hit these places. And here's the thing, Imam. Even if we don't, the threat of it will get people at the table saying, "What do you all want?" And then you have to, if you're going to be in this moment, you have to strike while the iron is hot. And because, look, around the world, when there is a revolt of the spirit, as it were, when the human spirit revolts against the ungodliness of this world, that one of the first places they go are to the royal palaces, because these individuals represent all that's wrong with our country, so to speak. They go in there and they raid these palaces, they tear them up and all those kind of things. It's like right now, tearing down some statues. Ah, the thing is, we shouldn't delete history. We need to manage the pain of our histories. But I understand the youthful rage about that. I get it. But if but you can't just erase, You don't want to go to your doctor and say,
Would
doctor,
you be happy to see that some corporate organizations, including some banks, are making a statement of Black Lives Matter? Does it encourage you, or it tells you, okay, yeah, now you're trying this method?
well, you know what? In the words of the great Chicago pimp, Don Magic Wand, he said, forget that $1,200. Give me a 750 credit score. You know, and so in other words, we need to market to the financial centers, the mortgage companies, and all that. And there has to be an acknowledgement that there was so much redlining and all these things that have gone on forever that it's almost like having a jubilee year where everything is reset. And the reason I'm saying it like that is that they talk about defunding. Okay, people got different definitions of defunding. So be it. I understand it as a negotiation tactic, but I know some friends who they really mean defund. And but it is getting into these places and creating a situation where individuals have been denied, which we've talked about. We've had laws on the books, but it is the actual enforcement. But in order to do that, I mean, it's just like military strategy, Mom. You got to take the land, not like in Seattle. Those poor guys. I heard they were sending out for food, man. They're like, somebody please send us some food. I mean, you know, that,
Well, thank you so much. We ran out of time. It was always pleasure to talk to you, Greg,
my
and
pleasure.
look forward to staying in touch. You
Yes.
can always watch us on Galaxy 19 satellite. This is Muslim Network TV, the only network Muslims have in America. American Fire TV, Roku, and always on our website, muslimnetwork.tv. And along with thanking our guest, Reverend Greg Livingston, I would like to thank our intern producer, Sumaya Heather, as well as Zahra Nadeem. Thank you so much. Peace. Salam.